All right, let me just quickly show you, because I've been talking a little bit about the desperation of liberal discourse and the like, and how the more liberals start seeing things like this, they start panicking and really start getting extremely desperate. So I want to play for you a video, or rather an audio, if we can pull this up from AOC, where, okay, we don't have that yet. So first let me show you an interview that Rachel Maddow gave. She gave an interview to CNN's Oliver Darcy, the media reporter. I'm sure it was you can imagine how adversarial that interview was, where CNN's Oliver Darcy interviewed MSNBC's Rachel Maddow. And here's part of the exchange that they had. Oliver Darcy asked Rachel Maddow, quote, Trump and his allies are openly talking about weaponizing the government to seek revenge against critics in media and politics, with some of his extremist allies even talking about jailing their fellow Americans. Now, I absolutely love the irony where liberals say, oh, we have to prevent Trump from getting into office, because if he does, he's going to use the Justice Department to prosecute and criminalize and imprison his allies, when that is all liberals have been trying to do to Trump for the last 3 years. Trump was president for 4 years and never once did that. He ran and would have a chant, lock her up. The difference, though, is he didn't do it. Democrats are actually doing it. And then Oliver Darcy goes on and says, you, Rachel Maddow, are one of his most notable critics on television. Are you worried that you could be a target? And then Rachel Maddow says, I'm worried about the country broadly if we put someone in power who's openly allowing that he plans to build camps to hold millions of people and to, quote, root out what he's described in some human terms as his, quote, the enemy within. Again, history is helpful here. He's not joking when he says this stuff. And we've seen what happens when people take power proclaiming that kind of agenda. I think there's a little bit of head in the sand complacency that Trump only intends to go after individual people he's already signaled out. Do you really think he plans to stop at well-known liberals? For that matter, what convinces you that these massive camps he's planning are only for migrants? So, yes, I'm worried about me, said Maddow, but only as much as I'm worried about all of us. So she's basically saying, yes, I'm one of the most notable people on television who criticizes Trump. And even though he had already had 4 years in office where he didn't do a single thing like any of this, he didn't build concentration camps or gas chambers, he didn't round up his critics and put them in prison, he didn't close newsrooms. Now suddenly they say, no, this time he's really going to do it. They were saying these things all before the 2016 election as well. I think it's very difficult to convince Americans that Trump is a Hitler figure when he was actually just president for 4 years ago, and I don't think Americans got the impression that he was doing things that made Hitler Hitler, that he wasn't building concentration camps and putting his political enemies in there. Now, if you think what Rachel Maddow was saying, like, yes, I'm worried about myself and going into a camp, was deranged, I need you to listen to what Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said yesterday as well when speaking to Kara Swisher. And listen not only to her words, but also the tone of voice she's employing when saying these things.
What happens to you if Donald Trump wins? What do you do? What's your first move?
I mean, it sounds nuts, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy threw me in jail.
Really?
I wouldn't be surprised if this guy threw me in jail. That was her first answer when she was asked, as a congressman, what's the first thing you would do? And she said, look, I'm probably going to have to be in jail. This guy's going to throw me in jail. That's how important I am. That's what a dissident I am. That's what a threat to establishment power I am, that Trump intends to put me, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's basically a glorified social media influencer, she's going to put him into a gulag, into a concentration camp. Listen to the rest.
He's out of his mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, he did his whole first campaign around lock her up. Like, this is his motto.
Oh, he didn't say that, you know. He said he didn't say it.
Yeah, right?
That, yeah.
I take him at his word. I take him at his word. I take him at his word when he says that he's going to round up people. I take him at his word when he threatens journalists. I take him at his word. I feel like what we saw in his first presidency was an amuse-bouche to what his intentions are. He has learned from his mistakes of appointing professionals, and he will not make that mistake next time.
Amazing that AOC is now saying, oh, in his first term, he appointed professionals. Do you think that was what they were saying about Trump's team during that first term in office? But anyway, it's not even just the utter narcissism and inflated self-importance that Trump is coming to put Rachel Maddow and AOC into concentration camps because they're such grave threats, such brave dissidents. I think they really believe it. It's like a kind of hysteria that they've been feeding on. Remember, these people only talk to each other and for each other. They only listen to the same media outlets that repeat all the same things. It's kind of like not just a groupthink or herd behavior, it's like a cult where you have this message indoctrinated, drummed into your head every day by your colleagues, by the media, by everyone who can provide you with positive rewards or negative rewards, that Trump really is this Hitler figure, that they start to believe it, even though he was just president 4 years ago and absolutely none of this happened. He did not put anybody in prison who were his political enemies. These are the people who are trying to put their political enemies into prison, and they've been doing it going all the way back to Trump's candidacy, to his campaign, and then to his presidency. Look at all the people who almost ended up in jail. Michael Flynn, Trump's incoming national security advisor, almost ended up in prison. He was charged and pled guilty because he picked up a phone and reached out to his counterpart in the Russian government to try and smooth over relations, exactly what you would expect them to do in the transition. They've been wanting the imprisonment of their political enemies, and they're getting the imprisonment of their political enemies for years, while at the same time they're projecting onto Trump what they themselves are doing. I suppose if you're somebody who really craves the imprisonment of your own political opponents, maybe I guess you just automatically assume that that's how everybody else thinks as well. Now, let me just give you this kind of amazing contrast to make this point that I want to underscore. And again, you just get a sense for how unhinged, how demented these people are, how maniacal they are, and the kinds of hysterical claims that they're trying to make, knowing they're seeing the same poll numbers as we just showed you. Nothing is working. And so they're getting out of their minds. At the end of April, just a couple months ago, the former Bush-Cheney spokeswoman, Nicole Wallace, who is now a very popular liberal host on MSNBC that has its own interesting dynamic buried within it, but Nicole Wallace went on the air, and while she didn't say she expects Trump to put her in a concentration camp the way AOC and Rachel Maddow did, this is something that, seemingly on the verge of tears, she was so worried about that she warned her audience might likely happen if Trump were elected. Listen to this.
I've seen that toast a bunch of times, but it landed very differently this year, because depending on what happens in November, 7 months from right now, this time next year, I might not be sitting here. There might not be a White House Correspondents' Dinner or a free press. While our democracy wouldn't exactly fall apart immediately without it, the real threat looms larger. A candidate with outward disdain, not just for a free press, but for all of our freedoms and for the rule of law itself.
Now, first of all, I think it's so funny that in trying to warn people of just how evil and extreme and dangerous Trump is, she said there might not even be a White House Correspondents' Dinner. That thing where they all dress up in gowns and pretend that they're at the Oscars and they get to go to the White House. But she is, again, saying, like, I think Trump's going to take me off the air. Like, he's just going to order me off the air. And the reason why I just find that so interesting is because I want you to hear the glee and the joy, to the point where she was almost cackling, Nicole Wallace was, in August of 2023, when she talked about how Trump was not only on his way to jail, but was being put into one of the most dangerous prisons in the entire country, where people have been murdered before, and how gleeful and happy she was. In other words, she's the one who wants to put her political enemies in jail. And I'm going to just leave to the side everything the Bush and Cheney administration did to destroy civil liberties while she was there and defending it. Listen to what she said back in 2023 when Trump was on his way to a Georgia jail.
Just a few minutes ago, Donald Trump, the disgraced ex-president, the frontrunner for the Republican nominee for president, 4 times indicted, departed his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. He's en route to Fulton County, Georgia, via Newark Airport, we believe. He will surrender himself for processing at an overcrowded jail with a reputation for violence and neglect. A jail that is accustomed to holding defendants facing charges up to and including violent crimes, where stabbings are frequent. Actually, 3 people have lost their lives over the last month. That jail is where the disgraced ex-president of these United States is heading right now.
I mean, do you see that? Who talks about prison that way? Like, she's so excited Trump's not just going to prison, but he's going to a prison that's one of the worst, most repressive, most dangerous prison where people get raped and murdered. She's the one who wants to put her political enemies into prison, and she and this crowd is doing that very well. They have nothing to run on. They are behind a candidate whose brain is melting and everyone can see it. And they are really spiraling out of control. And we're only in June. Imagine what they're going to be doing in July and August and September if these polling numbers stay the same or even get worse. I just think it's so important to take a step back and realize sometimes, probably most of you don't watch these shows. They're only speaking to like-minded people anyway. But I think it's important to note how inside, these are some of the world's largest media corporations. You're talking about NBC News here and then CNN, how genuinely detached these people are from reality. Not just how partisan they are, but how hysterical they are. They're spreading a kind of, or they're trying to spread a kind of paranoia and sickness into the American body politic out of their desperation that Trump might win, that is really disturbing, not just politically, but psychologically and emotionally. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.